There's nothing quite like animated horror. Using the power of one's imagination to draw creatures that would inspire your deepest, darkest nightmares. There is so much that the world of animation can provide. Gore that would be very difficult to do with special effects. Monsters that might look silly if put under makeup or CG. And disturbing things that you haven't even thought of yet that can be done so much better in the animated format. In the United States, we don't have a lot of animated horror, and what we have is generally aimed towards a younger demographic. While there's nothing wrong with this, in fact, some of the best kids' horror comes in animated formats. Tales from the Crypt Keeper, The Real Ghostbusters, even Beetlejuice provided some very dark comedy. However, when it comes to adult animation, there's not a lot in the US market for horror, which is a shame because there's some very talented directors who could probably make some very disturbing and dark films in the animated format. But there tends to be a bias against adult animation in the United States that isn't designed around fart jokes and family sitcoms. While we wait for the American animation industry to catch up, we're lucky that there are some amazing and disturbing animated movies and TV series from around the world. Japan has provided several great examples. Today, we're looking at one such example. Based on a Filipino comic book, Trese made her way to the United States via Netflix with an animated series that'll introduce you to the dark side of Filipino folklore. Based on the comic book of the same name, Trese takes place in the city of Manila, following Alexandra Trese, a mystic who works alongside the police to deal with bizarre and disturbing cases that tie into creatures and myths from Filipino folklore. Part X-Files, part Hellblazer, and a little bit Ghostbusters. This series definitely has an interesting mix of tones that help it tell its story. Each episode reveals a little bit more of Alexandra's backstory, alongside her father Anton, who is teaching her how to be the link between the world of the mystical and the world of the mundane. Meanwhile, Alexandra usually has some case of the day dealing with a missing person, a murder, or any number of other issues that may happen on a day-to-day basis in Manila. As Season 1 progresses, the backstory starts to fill in not only information about some of the other characters that Alexandra spends time with, but also helps set up the main villain that we face in the season finale. One of the more interesting parts of the show is that you come across various different Filipino creatures, such as duendes, tigbalangs, aswangs, amongst others, and hopefully I pronounced those names correctly. Our finale has Alexandra Trese taking on a god that her father had sealed several years ago, and facing revelations about who she is and some of the dark secrets about her family. We do have a sequel bait after credits sequence, which is good to know because Season 2 has already been greenlit. So not so much a sequel bait, so much as a tease for what will be coming up next. We have a very interesting cast of characters. Our lead, Alexandra Trese, feels like your typical action horror lead. Very withdrawn, very quiet, pensive, figuring things out and using connections to get the answers that she can't figure out on her own. Sadly, she's kind of one of the least interesting characters of the entire work. While her backstory, her connection to her father, her connections to other beings are really interesting, the character herself is relatively bland, which is kind of a down point for this series. That being said, she kicks some ass, she has some good quips, and she does fill a detective-type character role very well. Backing up Alexandra are the Kambal, Crispin, and Basilo. These brothers are demigods who have sworn allegiance to the Trese family and serve as Alexandra's muscle for the majority of the cases. Oftentimes, they're the ones doing the fighting while she is trying to prepare some sort of spell or ritual in order to solve the greater problem. They also don't have much in terms of personality, but they do have an interesting backstory that makes them significantly more complicated characters than they may appear at first. In fact, I'd actually like to learn more about them in the next season. Captain Guerrero is Alexandra's main connection with the police force. He's in charge of the local precinct that she works alongside, and he's a very complicated character in and of himself. Not only is he trying to be a good cop, and functions as something of a father figure to Trese. He gets a good focus episode where the police station is under attack by zombies, and all the various moments with him, whether they're comedic or action-packed, make him a very likable and relatable character. One of the few recurring villains in this series is Mayor Sancho Santamaria. He is a corrupt mayor who is working alongside the Aswang to gain a little more power and status, and he then starts to build his own little cult later on in the story. He not only represents the standard corrupt politician character, but also an occultist, which kind of works really well, especially with this series and the tone and feel of everything that's going on in the city of Manila. Beyond that, we have quite a few different creatures who play small roles here and there, though it's interesting to see how they connect not only to Alexandra, but also to her father, and even to each other. While most of the creatures in the series don't have much in terms of personalities, they are really cool, they have awesome designs, and it just makes me want to learn more about the various myths and legends of the Philippines. The artwork in the series is amazing. They clearly put a lot of money into this series to make it look as beautiful as possible. Not only to pay tribute to the source material, but also to produce something that can really stand out amongst other animated series. The city looks dark, foreboding. It has very much a gothic feel, though still a modern design. Things tend to be creepy, especially the background scenery. The monsters themselves are oftentimes disturbing looking. Even the ones who are friendly aren't always that pretty. And I like that gritty, dark feel that this has. If everything was colorful and happy, it wouldn't really look right. And there's a lot of the creatures in Filipino myth that could be done significantly more cartoony and silly if you really wanted to. However, this makes the creatures look much more dangerous, which probably goes a lot closer to what they were meant to be in the original myths. But most importantly, the atmosphere is just perfect for horror. Tension can build up by just having the characters walk down a hallway. Seeing monsters rip the flesh off of a human. Seeing some of the gory and graphic deaths. Everything comes together so well, and this shows why animated horror works so well. Because you have dark, gory visuals, a deep, disturbing atmosphere, and awesome-looking characters. Overall, the audio is pretty good. The music sets the mood very well, and the action music works pretty well during the action scenes as well. While the title song is different than your usual animated series title song, it's not really going to stick with you. But like the music in the series, it does help it stand apart from other entries in the genre. The English acting is pretty good, but it has some strange quirks. While I do appreciate Filipino actors coming in and voicing various characters, oftentimes with accents, we also have characters who just speak standard American English. It seems odd that some characters would have accents and other characters wouldn't. Minor nitpick at most, but it just felt kind of strange. I remember being at Anime Expo when they showed off some initial sketches and designs for Trese, and I didn't have a lot of faith in the series, to be honest. I thought it would look cool if they did it right, but I also realized it could look really stupid if they did it wrong. Thankfully, they did it right. And the reason why I don't have high hopes when it comes to direct-to-Netflix series is that there's quite a bit of evidence showing that direct-to-Netflix is kind of a bad thing. Whether the shows are just intrinsically bad, or whether they began good and fall apart horribly, which has happened many, many times, a Netflix original tends to be a badge of dishonor in my book. And this was one of the few exceptions that puts me in a good mood. Ideally, they won't destroy this series the way that many other Netflix originals completely imploded on themselves and became complete garbage and unwatchable. I am looking forward to season 2. Because the creator of the comic is involved with the production, I get the feeling that things will flow a lot better than they did with other series that were Netflix originals. As the comic has been going for quite some time, there are plenty of stories for them to draw from, and of course original stories wouldn't be a bad idea because there's so much to explore in the world of Filipino mythology. If you haven't been able to tell already, I highly recommend Trese. Even if you're not a huge fan of animation, you will probably still really enjoy this. The creature designs, the action, the general aesthetic of the show is all wonderful. It's the kind of dark, gritty, horror action series that I wish we had an American version of. But for now, we can all be grateful that there are many countries around the world providing amazing, dark, horror animated series and movies. Thank you for watching. Please like and subscribe, and check out our description to find ways to support the channel. If you have the chance, please drop a note in the comments telling me what your favorite animated horror movie or TV series is. Whether it's comedic, it's for kids, or it's really dark and gritty, it will make for fun conversation to see what everyone is into. And until next time, happy Summerween, and I'll see you at the tavern.